There is one more small part from the code of ethics. In the code of ethics, there is one more thing which has been newly added: non-compliances with the laws and regulations. There's one more thing. This is an amendment. This is newly added in the syllabus, so very important from the examination perspective. Since it is a newly added content, it is highly important in the examination. So let us see what is that. Non-compliances with the laws and regulations, which we in short also call it as Noclar. Sir, what is this Noclar? Non-compliances with the laws and regulations. So what is the meaning of that? Very simple, guys. First I will try to summarize the concept. So Noclar regulations, we say. So what is this Noclar of the code of ethics says is, if you are a professional accountant, either you are in service, either you are in practice. If you are a professional accountant, basically if you are a chartered accountant, you could be either in service, you could be either in practice. As a part of your professional work, for example, if you are a professional accountant, you are in service, you are working with some company, you are a chartered accountant, you are doing some job in the company. As a part of that responsibility, as a part of doing your job with the company, if you came to know that your client has not complied with some laws and regulations, you have to report it to the concerned persons outside the organization or inside the organization. So if you are a professional accountant in service, if you are working as an employee in some company, as a course of your responsibilities, if you came to know that your client is not complying with some laws and regulations, if your client is violating some laws and regulations, it is your responsibility to communicate that non-compliances with the laws and regulations with appropriate persons, either within the entity or outside the entity. Sir, who will be that appropriate person? That all depends on the facts and circumstances. Sir, with whom I have to communicate with that non-compliances in the laws and regulations? That all depends on the facts and circumstances. But whatever it is, as a part of your professional responsibility, if you find any non-compliances with the laws and regulations, you have to inform that non-compliances with the laws and regulations with the concerned people within or outside the organization. Similarly, if you are a professional accountant in practice. Assume I'm a chartered accountant in practice. I'm doing some audit assignment. As a part of that audit assignment, I came to know that my client has violated some laws and regulations. My client did not do the compliances with the laws and regulations. Even as a professional accountant in practice, there is a responsibility on me to communicate this non-compliances with the laws and regulations with the appropriate parties within or outside the client's organization. Sir, who will be that appropriate parties with whom you are required to communicate? That all depends on the facts and circumstances of the assignment you are doing, the facts and circumstances of the client you are doing, the purpose of your engagement. Depending on all that factors, it will decide to whom you have to communicate that non-compliances with the laws and regulations. Simple. That's it. That's what the Noclar part of the code of ethics says. Understood? Nothing complicated here. If you are a professional accountant, you could be either in service or you could be either in practice. As a part of your professional work, if you come across any non-compliances with the laws and regulations, that you communicate with the concerned authorities, either within the entity or outside of the entity. So that is what simply they are trying to say here. So first they have told meaning, what is Noclar. Basically, in short, we call it as non-compliances also. So Noclar comprises of acts of omission or commission, either intentional or unintentional, which are contrary to the prevailing laws and regulations. First of all, what do you mean by non-compliance with the laws and regulations? Non-compliance with the laws and regulations means either an act of omission. Act of omission means you are not doing something, or commission, or you are doing something. So whatever you are not doing or whatever you are doing, which is either intentionally you are doing it or non-intentionally you are doing it, and that is against to the prevailing laws and regulations. Sir, what is that they are trying to say? Take for example, as per law, so you are required to do something. You are required to do some act. Either you are not doing it, or you are doing it in a wrong way, either intentionally or unintentionally. That we call it as non-compliance. Or you are doing something which is against the law, either intentionally or unintentionally. That we call it as non-compliance. So non-compliance is an act of omission or commission. Either you are not doing something or you are doing something intentionally or unintentionally. Either intentionally you do or don't do, or unintentionally you do or don't do. Then the thing which you are not doing or doing is against to the laws and regulations, which is contrary to the prevailing laws and regulations. Take for example, I will give you one simple example. Income Tax Act says if your income is more than basic exemption limit, if your total taxable income is more than basic exemption limit, you are required to file your income tax return. I am required to file my income tax return if my total income exceeds basic exemption limit. My total income has exceeded the basic exemption limit, but I did not file my return. I did an act of omission. I did a act of omission. Act is asking me to file my income tax return if my income exceeded basic exemption limit. I did not do it. I have committed an act of omission. Either I did it intentionally or unintentionally. Might be I'm not aware of the tax laws. I don't know what is basic exemption limit also. Since I'm unaware of the tax laws, I did not file my return. Will the income tax department leave me? Okay, you did not file the return because you are unaware, you are unintentional. We will not punish you. Will the income tax department ignore? No, still they will punish you. You can't go and blame, sir, I don't know tax laws and regulations, so that's why I did not file the return. Will the income tax department spare you? No. Or you know it, your income is more than basic exemption limit, but still intentionally you did not file your return. That also will come under non-compliance. So act of omission. I did not file my income tax return, either intentionally or unintentionally. And not filing of my income tax return is contrary to the prevailing laws and regulations, is against the prevailing laws and regulations. So this I call it as non-compliance. Similarly, I am doing something. For example, as per the Income Tax Act, it says that as per the sections of the Income Tax Act, I am required to calculate some income in some manner. If I follow that rule, my income should have been 5 lakh rupees. But what I have done is, instead of showing my income as 5 lakh rupees, I have shown it as 4 lakh rupees only. Commission. I have done some act. So where Income Tax Act is asking me to declare the income as 5 lakh rupees, I am declaring my income as 4 lakh rupees. So I am doing something. I am doing an act of commission. Either intentionally I do it or unintentionally I do it. But whatever I am doing, that is contrary, that is against the prevailing laws and regulations. That is what I simply call it as Noclar. So hope you got the definition of you got the clarity of the definition. So Noclar means non-compliances which comprises of either act of omission or commission, either intentional or unintentional, which are contrary, which are against to the prevailing laws or regulations, which are committed by whom? Either your client. If you are a professional accountant in practice, then you will call it as client. Your client is committing some act of omission or commission. Or a professional accountant's employing organization. Employing organization means, we use the term employing organization when you are an employee. See, often they use these terms client or employing organization, they say. So they often use this client or employing organization. Sir, why they use client or employing organization? If you are a professional accountant in practice, if you are a practicing chartered accountant, then the entity to whom you are providing the services, that person will be called as client. If you are a professional accountant in service, if I'm a chartered accountant but I'm working with some company, that company will become your employing organization. So when they use the term client, they are talking in terms of professional accountant in practice. When they use the term employing organization, they are talking in terms of professional accountant in service. Hope you are able to get it. So committed by whom, sir? When we call this as non-compliance, this act of omission or the act of commission should have been committed either by your client or professional accountant's employing organization, or those charged with governance of the client or employing organization, or management of the client or employing organization, or other individuals working for or under the direction of the client or employing organization, nothing but employees of your client or employing organization. So if any act of commission or omission, either intentional or unintentional, which are contrary to the prevailing laws and regulations, which is committed by any of this person, who could have committed it? Either the client or your employing organization, or those charged with governance of client or employing organization, or management of your client or employing organization, or any other individuals who are working under the directions of your client or employing organization, nothing but the basic employees of the company also can do that non-compliances. Clear? However, Noclar does not address, however, when I say non-compliance, it does not include the personal misconduct unrelated to the business of the activity or client's employing organization. For example, I'm conducting audit of some client X Limited. I'm conducting audit of the client X Limited. I came to know that one of the board of directors of this client X Limited committed a murder. One of the board of directors has committed a murder. For example, he committed a murder of his family relative. Now, will that also come under non-compliance, which I should be bothered about? No. Non-compliance, when I say Noclar, you are responsible for verifying the non-compliances with the laws and regulations which are related to the business of your client or employing organization. It does not involve any personal misconduct. For example, you are employee of some company. Now, the CEO of your employing organization, he is committing some violence against his wife. So his wife has filed a domestic violence case against the CEO. It is a personal misconduct. Are you required to enter in this family matter also? Are you required to report this also? No, that is personal misconduct. When I say non-compliance, I am talking about the non-compliances related to the business. When I say Noclar, it doesn't have any relationship with personal misconduct. Personally, whatever wrong things they are doing unrelated to the business, that I need not worry about it. So when I say Noclar, Noclar does not address the personal misconduct unrelated to the business activities of the client or employing organization, and non-compliance by the parties other than listed out in the definition of Noclar. So when I say Noclar, I should be concerned about those non-compliances which are committed by these persons only. If non-compliance, if act or omission are committed by someone other than this four, I need not worry about it. So they are telling non-compliances committed by the client or professional accountant, those charged with governance of the client or employing organization, management of the client or employing organization, and other individuals working for or under the directions of the client or employing organization. If you pay close attention here, the non-compliances committed by third parties on your client company is not getting covered here. Non-compliances committed by third parties on the client is not getting covered here. You need not worry about any non-compliances committed by third parties. You should be worried about only those non-compliances which are committed by your client or those charged with the governance of your client, management of your client, or employees of your client. So you should report only that. Third party related non-compliances, you need not worry about it. For example, your company is having one debtor. That debtor has committed non-compliance. Are you required to report that also? No. You are required to report only those non-compliances which are committed by your client, the management of your client, those charged with governance of your client or employees of your client, not any third party related non-compliances. Clear? So we understood what is the meaning of non-compliance. Then applicability of Noclar. Sir, you are telling, as per the Noclar rules and regulations, if we come across any non-compliances either in practice or in service, we are required to report to concerned authorities. To whom it will be applicable, sir? As I have told, it will be applicable for professional accountants in service also. It will be it will be applicable for professional accountants in practice also. But this is specifically when it comes to service, there are only specific persons who are in service who are required to comply with Noclar. Who are they? Let us see. So professional accountant service responding to Noclar is applicable to the senior professional accountants in service being employees of listed companies. Listen carefully. Noclar will become, if you are a professional accountant in practice, if you are in employment with some company, you are required to comply with Noclar rules and regulations. If you are an employee of a listed company and also you are a senior professional accountant. Sir, first thing, if I am an employee of a non-listed entity, am I required to comply with Noclar rules and regulations? Not required. It is mandatory for a professional accountant in service to comply with the Noclar only when he is an employee of a listed company, that too senior professional accountant. Sir, who will come under senior professional accountant? If you are a director, if you are in the position of a director, if you're in the position of some officer, if you're in the position of a senior employee who is able to exercise significant influence and make decisions regarding acquisition, deployment, control of the employing organizations, human, financial, technological, physical, and intangible resources. That means you are such a senior employee who is having control, who is having a decision-making power in these matters of human, financial, technological, physical, and intangible resources. It is further explained that when I say senior professional accountant, I am talking to key managerial person. If you are in a top level position, if you are an employee of a listed company, that too you are in a top level position. You are in a key managerial person like finance head, like CFO or finance head or director of finance. Like that, if you are in a top level position of a listed company, and in that top level position of a listed company, if you identify any non-compliances with the laws and regulations, then only you are required to communicate with the concerned authorities. Sir, I am a professional accountant, I am a chartered accountant, I went to the job for non-listed company, there I found out any non-compliances with the laws and regulations. It is not a mandatory requirement to communicate with the regulatory authorities or other persons in the organization. Sir, I am an employee of a listed company. For example, I am an employee of Infosys. Infosys is a listed company, but I am a very low level employee. Low level employee in the sense, not some clerk and all. I'm a chartered accountant, I'm a finance associate, I'm a part of their finance team. I'm not some CEO or key managerial person. My client is a listed, my employing organization is a listed company. I'm an employee there, but I'm not a senior professional accountant. I'm not at the level of key managerial person. Then also you need not comply with the Noclar. Clear? Able to understand? So Noclar related rules and regulations will be applicable to the professional accountant in service who are employed in the listed entities and who are in the senior professional accountant position. Sir, who will fall under senior professional accountant? Basically key managerial persons. Sir, what about professional accountants in practice? When the Noclar regulations will be applicable for professional accountants who are in public practice, like practicing chartered accountants. So they say that responding to Noclar is applicable to audit engagements of entities the shares of which are listed on the recognized stock exchange. If you are conducting audit of a company which is listed on the stock exchange, that means if you are conducting audit of a listed company, then you have to comply with Noclar requirements. And also not just listed on the stock exchange, and they should have a net worth of 250 crores or more. Only when these two conditions are satisfied. For example, if you are a professional accountant, if you are a chartered accountant in practice, if you are conducting audit engagement, if you pay close attention here, when you are conducting other engagements, if you are conducting review, if you are conducting assurance, if you are conducting related services, then Noclar is not applicable. If you are a chartered accountant in practice, Noclar is applicable only when you are conducting audit engagement, that too of a listed entity, and who have a net worth of more than 250 crores. For example, you are conducting an audit of a listed entity, but the net worth is 200 crores only. Are you required to comply with Noclar rules and regulations? Are not required. The client should be listed company, and their net worth should also be more than 250 crores. When both the conditions are satisfied and you are conducting audit of such an entity, then only you are required to comply with Noclar rules and regulations. Very important from the examination perspective. Okay. And one more thing also I told, if you are a professional accountant in public practice, Noclar will become applicable only for audit engagement. It will not become applicable for review. It will not become applicable for assurance. It will also not become applicable for related services. Only for audit engagements, that too of listed companies and having a net worth of 250 crores or more. Only in those cases, Noclar will become applicable. Clear? What if you are a professional accountant in service? You should be employed in a listed company, and that too you should be a senior professional accountant. Then only Noclar will become applicable. So we have seen meaning of Noclar. We have also seen applicability of Noclar. Now, some important facts about Noclar. So what are they? Not responsible for investigation. See, when I say you are required to report on the non-compliances of the rules and regulations, of the laws and regulations, I'm not expecting you to do the detailed investigation whether your client or employing organization has complied with laws and regulations. It is not expected from you. As a part of your routine responsibilities, for example, if you are conducting audit of some client company, as a part of your audit, if you came to know about any laws and regulations, that you will report. Similarly, if you are an employee in some organization, as a part of your normal responsibilities, if you come across any laws and regulations, then only you will report. This Noclar is not putting any specific requirement on the professional accountants to do a detailed investigation of laws and regulations. No, they did not put that requirement. They are telling that as a part of your routine responsibilities, as a part of your routine professional responsibilities, if you came across any non-compliances, that only you report it. Don't do separate investigation to check whether your client or employing organization has complied with the laws and regulations. So that is what they say here. Not responsible for conducting investigation. Professional accountant is not required to investigate, nor responsible for ensuring complete compliances. You are not supposed to do detailed investigation of laws and regulations as a part of your normal responsibilities. In case if you come across any law, any non-compliances, that only you report. Don't do any separate investigation. Expertise of law is not required. And also, when this code of ethics is expecting you to report on the non-compliances with the laws and regulations, that means, are you supposed to be an expert in the law? Not required. There is an expertization of laws and regulations is also not required from you. The same thing they say, a professional accountant is expected to apply knowledge. I think incomplete sentences are here. So let me read it from here. Yeah. A professional accountant is expected to apply knowledge and expertise and exercise professional judgment. However, he is not expected to have a level of knowledge of laws and regulations greater than what is required. We are not expecting you to be an expert in law. Just whatever knowledge you have to require, that much is enough. We don't expect any expertise from the chartered accountants. Whether an act constitutes a non-compliance is ultimately a matter to be determined by the court. See, whether finally it is non-compliance or not, it has to be decided by the court of law. We are not asking you to have that much expertise. We are not expecting you to have expertise of a lawyer or a judge of a court. So whatever is required, that much if you have, it will be enough. Next one. Certain matters expressly out of purview. Certain non-compliances are completely out of purview. What matters are completely out of purview? Matters that are clearly inconsequential or relating to personal misconduct, not pertaining to business activities of the client are not covered. As I've already told you, business misconduct, personal misconduct is not covered. Like an employee has committed a fraud, or so one of the CEO has committed a crime like murder or something. So this will not get covered under your scope. These matters you are not required to report. And disclosure which is contrary to law is not required. If you feel that for complying with the Noclar, as a result of complying with the Noclar, if you have to communicate the non-compliances with the laws and regulations, that will lead to violation of the law. If you feel by following this Noclar rules and regulations, you are violating some law or regulation, then you should not follow Noclar regulations. Law will always prevail. So that's what they say. As per IESBA code, disclosure of the matter to an appropriate authority would be precluded, would be not required, if doing so would contrary to law and regulation. So you are feeling that there is some non-compliance, you are required to communicate with some authority. But if you feel that if you communicate, you will be violating laws and regulations. In that case, which one will prevail? There is a conflict between laws and regulations and Noclar. Which one will prevail? Law will always prevail. Understood? So these are some important facts with regarding Noclar. And also if you pay close attention, see, when we discuss the standards on audit, I have also explained you SA 250. SA 250 is also talking about auditors' responsibilities regarding laws and regulations. As an auditor, while you are conducting audit, if you came across non-compliances with the laws and regulations, what will be your responsibility? If you remember, for SA 250 to discuss the auditor's responsibility, we divided the laws and regulations into two categories. Those laws and regulations which have a direct impact on determination of amounts and disclosures in the financial statements. Those laws and regulations which do not have a direct effect on determination of amounts and disclosures in the financial statements, but the compliance is required either to avoid penalties or which are fundamental to continue the business. Remember this discussion? Or everything has gone to a sum? No, you should have remembered it. So we have discussed in a very much detailed manner SA 250. Lot of time we have spent in understanding the concept. Sir, we learned something regarding auditors' responsibility relating to compliances with laws and regulations in SA 250. Now you told us one more responsibility under Noclar. Sir, what is the difference between these two? What is the difference between Noclar regulations, whatever we have learned now, and the auditor's responsibilities regarding laws and regulations while conducting audit of the financial statements? Between the Noclar and SA 250, what are the differences? Let us say differences we have seen here. So SA 250 will applicable only for audit. SA 250 will only become applicable if you are a chartered accountant in practice, and if you are conducting audit assignment, then only SA 250 will become applicable. But if you pay close attention, just now as I have told, Noclar will become for professional accountants in service also. Noclar will become applicable for professional accountants in practice also. But SA 250 will become applicable only when you are in practice and you are conducting audit assignments. But Noclar will become applicable even if you are in service. Next one. SA 250 talks of auditors' responsibility for two kinds of laws and regulations. Laws and regulations having direct effect on determination of amounts and disclosures, that we call it as category 1 laws and regulations, and other laws and regulations that do not have a direct effect on the determination of amounts and disclosures in the financial statements, but the compliance will be fundamental to operate the business. So this is category 2 laws and regulations. So SA 250 talks about auditors' responsibilities regarding laws and regulations, and SA 250 talks about auditors' responsibility only regarding two types of laws and regulations. But there is no such requirement in Noclar. Noclar says that Noclar, while being alike to SA 250 till this point, is further ahead of it, that it takes into account non-compliances that causes substantial harm, resulting in serious consequences either in financial or non-financial terms. So SA 250 talks about auditors' responsibility mainly related to financial related laws and regulations, but Noclar is talking about non-compliances with every law and regulation, whether that could be financial consequences or it could have non-financial consequences. Every kind of law and regulation is getting covered under Noclar. Whereas SA 250 talks about mainly auditors' responsibilities regarding those laws and regulations which have financial consequences, but Noclar is much wider. It talks about every law and regulation which is having either financial consequences or non-financial consequences, doesn't matter. Next one. SA 250 does not define the term stakeholders. They did not say laws and regulations affecting which persons have to be reported. Should I report the laws and regulations which are affecting shareholders? Should I consider the laws and regulations which affect the bankers? Should I consider the laws and regulations which are affecting that common public? They did not address. They say general laws and regulations they have told. So SA 250 does not define the stakeholders, but in the Noclar is related to effect of non-compliance on investors, creditors, employees as well as general public. But in the Noclar they have told that you should be concerned about those laws and regulations which will have an impact on the investors also, creditors also, employees also, general public also, but no such a definition of stakeholders are given under SA 250. And then finally in Noclar they say that, see, remember in SA 250, when we go back to the discussion, they told that if we find any non-compliance in SA 250, if we find any non-compliance, first we have to communicate the matter with management and those charged with governance. Then we have to consider giving the modified opinion. Then we have to determine is there any requirement to communicate with the regulatory authorities. In SA 250, they have told, so once again let me write it here. In SA 250, they say that finally, after performing audit procedures, if you have identified any non-compliances, first you have to communicate the matter with management or those charged with governance. After that, you have to consider modifying the opinion. After that, if felt appropriate, you have to communicate with the regulatory authorities also. So first you have to communicate with management and those charged with governance. Then if required, you have to communicate with the regulatory authorities. But in Noclar, they have told one provision. They say that in case of Noclar, under Noclar regulations, if you find any non-compliance, if you feel that if I communicate this non-compliance with the management or those charged with governance, that will not be good scenario, then what I can do is, instead of communicating with the management and those charged with governance, directly I can go and communicate with the regulating authority to minimize the consequences. In Noclar, there is a power given to you in case if you find any non-compliance, instead of first communicating with the management or those charged with governance, you can directly communicate that matter with the regulating authority in order to mitigate the consequences. But that provision is not there under SA 250. In SA 250, you have to communicate with the management and those charged with governance. Then you have to consider thinking about reporting the matter to regulating authority. But in Noclar, they have given one provision which says that as per Noclar, the professional accountant might disclose the matter immediately to an appropriate authority in order to prevent or mitigate the consequences before communicating with management or those charged with governance. Instead of communicating with the management and those charged with governance first, he can directly go and communicate with the regulating authorities in case of Noclar. But that permission has not been given in SA 250. SA 250 says first you have to communicate with management and those charged with governance, then you have to communicate with regulating authorities. But that you can bypass in the case of Noclar. Able to understand? So this is what regarding differences between Noclar versus SA 250. 4 points of difference I have told. SA 250 applicable only for audit. Noclar is applicable for professional accountants in service also, professional accountants in public practice also. SA 250 talks about loss and responsibilities which have mainly financial consequences, but Noclar will go beyond that and they will talk about even loss and regulations which have even non-financial consequences as well. SA 250 does not define the stakeholders. Noclar has clearly defined who and all are stakeholders. And in case of Noclar, there is a provision that in case if you feel communicating with the management and those charged with governance is not that appropriate, first what you can do is you can go and communicate with the regulating authority to minimize the consequences. But no such provision is there under SA 250. So these are the differences between Noclar versus SA 250. Then finally we have some documentation requirements as per Noclar. So with respect to Noclar, certain matters you have to include in the documentation. What are they? How management or those charged with governance responded to the matter. So if you communicated the non-compliances to management or those charged with governance, what responses you have got, you have to document it. The course of action the accountant considered, the judgments made, and the decisions that were taken having regard to the reasonable informed third party test. Nothing but if you come across non-compliance, how you have to respond to it, what judgments you have made, on what basis you have decided to whom to communicate, so that you should apply once again reasonable informed third party test. Like as I've told you here, in case of threats to independence, I told if some other reasonable party is there who is in the same position, what he would have done, the same thing you should also do regarding non-compliances also. If you find any non-compliances, so whom to report, how to communicate, that judgments you have to make doing a reasonable informed third party test. That means if some other person is there in my situation, what he will do. So the same thing you have to think and determine what should be the course of action, and same thing you have to think of and you have to decide what you have to do in case if you come across non-compliance, what course of action you have to follow. So the same thing they say, the course of action the accountant considered, the judgments made, and the decisions that were taken having regard to reasonable informed third party test. So what response you have taken, what decisions you have made, to whom you have communicated, and if there is any reasonable and informed third party in your position, would have also done the same thing. That test you have to do it here also. How the accountant is satisfied that the responsibility of the public interest has been fulfilled. And finally, you should also document how you have made sure that public interest is not affected because of non-compliances. What steps you have taken to make sure that public interest is protected because of laws and regulations. That also you have to document. Nothing but some formalities are there. These things you have to include in the documentation as per the requirements of Noclar. Clear? So what we have seen regarding Noclar, first we have seen what is the meaning of the Noclar. So Noclar means what? It's an act of omission or commission, either intentional or unintentional, which is contrary to the prevailing laws and regulations, committed by client or employing organization, management of the client or employing organization, those charged with governance of the client or employing organization, or those people who are under the control or working under the directions of the management or working under the directions of client or employing organization. And Noclar does not include personal misconduct. It also does not include any non-compliance conducted by parties other than we have seen above. Then to whom it will be applicable? If professional accountant in service, it will be applicable for professional accountant in service who are working in the listed entities and who are a senior professional accountant. When it comes to professional accountant in practice, Noclar will become applicable when you are conducting audit of a listed entity and who is having a net worth of 250 crores or more. Then some important facts we have seen, like you're not expected to do investigation. You no need to have a perfect expertise regarding laws and regulations. Certain matters are out of your purview, like personal misconduct and all, and disclosure which is contrary to the laws and regulations is not required to be done. And then we have seen a few differences between Noclar versus SA 250. Then also we have seen what are the documentation requirements as per Noclar. Clear? So with this we are done with the code of ethics related content also.